Hi everyone, welcome to the studio. Today we're going to be creating our own version of the Great Wave inspired by Hokusai. Let's get started. First, let's take a look at the artwork for our inspiration. This is the Great Wave, which is a woodblock print created by the Japanese artist Hokusai. It depicts a great rogue wave threatening 3 boats below. Way in the background, you can spot Mount Fuji, Japan's largest mountain and active volcano. If you'd like to learn more, check out these 2 books, which are some of my favorites, The Great Wave and One Day in the Life of Hokusai. Now, let's gather our materials. You'll need watercolors, a paintbrush and some water, some tempera paint in just blues and white, and some type of brush that can create texture, and your paper. Let's get started. I'm going to start by sketching a few guidelines to help me. Halfway down the side of my paper is where I'm going to begin my first large wave. It's going to come up and hook around. I'm just kind of using my hand to visualize where I'm going to put it. I'm going to come up, make a big bump and stop, and then reverse back the other way like I'm making a letter C, and just kind of slowly go across the paper. Now, in between the middle and the bottom, I'm going to make my wave that's in the foreground. So here I'm just going to make some large curves or bumps going across the paper, however many you like. Feel free to add some shapes of boats if you like. But don't forget, in the background, we have the great Mount Fuji. I'm just going to make a little bump right in the middle behind the largest wave. Put a little snow cap on it, and there you go. I want to keep my drawing simple, so I'm ready to paint now. So I'm going to gather my watercolors. That part is going to be for the sky, the farthest background that we have. First, you want to think about what time of day or what type of weather is shown in your sky. You might want to choose warm colors, maybe a sunset, or maybe you want to go with a set of cool colors, or maybe you've got some rainbows in your sky. Whatever you like, you're the artist. I'm just going to put a few drops of water in the colors that I'm going to be using. I'm choosing warm colors. I want it to look kind of like a sunset, and I am going to use a flat, thicker brush because I have quite a large paper to cover. I like to paint watercolor skies going from left to right. It doesn't have to be stripes, just kind of a natural blend until my color or my water run out. I like to keep it smooth, so I keep adding some water and some color. I keep switching colors every time so that when I'm adding more colors, I can blend them into each other to create some differences in the coloring. So I'm just using warm colors right now, like reds, oranges, yellows. I'll add a little bit of magenta in there. Just be sure not to use too much water. You don't want to get any puddles on your paper. Try to spread it out evenly. If you do want it to be darker, just be sure to get a little bit more paint, a little bit less water to get some darker colors. You can also try adding some water to your paint set a little bit earlier, maybe a half an hour or more before you start painting. That'll really soak into your paint set so you can get a darker color. Now, as I get closer to the line where my pencil is and the wave, I'm not going to be too worried about getting it right on the line. I'm going a little bit over the line and not really staying in the lines, and that's okay. When we get to painting our wave, we're going to use tempera paint, which is a lot more opaque, and we will clean that line up and paint over any areas of the sky or the watercolors that kind of went over and into your wave. So no worries. Now that I've completed my sky, the next thing closer to us is the volcano or Mount Fuji. Now you can paint it blue like Hokusai did in his work, but I think I'm going to go with a kind of brownish color for mine. So since it's brown, I'm going to use the watercolors. Just get a little bit of water. I'm going to add a little bit of brown and keep the top white. This time I'm going to kind of go close and get a crisp edge on the sides of the volcano. I might mix a little bit of black in there on the edges just to make it stand out and give it a little bit of form. Now we're going to start on the waves. I'm going to use tempera paint. I have a dark blue and a light blue and a white. I'm going to clean off my brush. I don't need any extra water in here because these are not watercolors. And I'd like to use my flat brush again. We're going to be creating some long strokes of paint going upward to show that the wave is rising. So I'm going to start with my darker blue all the way on the edge. I'm going to spread it upward. We're going to use both the blue and the white. I'm going to suggest the darker colors for this middle ground, and I'm going to just dip back and forth. I'm not even going to clean my brush because as I put it on, I'm going to let the colors blend. So I'm going to kind of reverse back into the color previously and then move a little bit more forward. Again, I'm not going to be too concerned about a nice crisp line where my pencil is, because our final step will be to add a little bit of a splash or a spray with a textured brush for the edges. Keep painting upward with a slight curve so it looks like the wave is kind of coming up, about to crest and curl over. All the way to the edge till you get to the other side of the paper. Be careful not to do too much blending. You don't want to end up with one solid color blue. You also don't want to have like real crisp stripes. So when you look at it, you might want to see like there, I just went back in with a little bit more white. So you could see a lot of different values in the color. I'm just cleaning off my brush. I'm ready to do the wave in the foreground. This time I'm going to use the lighter blue and mix that with white. Now I want it to look like it's rising again. This wave's just not quite as big. I am going to just kind of trace the line where my pencil was just to kind of make it stand out a little bit more. You don't have to do this though. We will be taking a little bit of the white to give it that like splatter and splash effect with the textured brush. Okay, now to do the wave in the foreground, I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to make the line of the wave kind of rising up and just go back and forth between the light blue and the white. Overlap them and let them blend just a tad. So you should still see the different colors or different values of the whites and the blues and in between. It should be a little bit lighter looking than the wave behind it. If both your waves are beginning to look a little bit too similar, you always go back and add a little bit more white into the wave in the foreground to make it stand out a little bit. And then I'll add a little bit of white right to the top of my snow-capped Mount Fuji. Now we're going to create some texture with white paint on the tops of the wave to make it look like it's splashing. I'm going to use this. It's called a funny brush. It's made with little rubber bands, but you don't have to use this. Any kind of brush that can create texture. You could probably use a really large brush, a stencil brush, or maybe even an old toothbrush. So I'm going to dip my paintbrush or my funny brush into the white paint, and I'm just going to tap it all along, kind of overlapping the wave and up into the sky.